On my birthday, Damien's childhood friend slit her wrists. She used the threat of suicide to force him to break up with me. Damien ignored her, saying that celebrating my birthday was the most important thing, and that he would never be with her in this lifetime. Later that night, unable to sleep, I found him on the balcony, on the phone with a friend. I have no choice. I'm dying. If I give her hope and then leave, she won't be able to live on. So I have to pretend to be in love with someone else. Damien had stomach cancer. I found the diagnosis report by accident. At first, I thought he was hiding it because he was afraid of worrying me. So, I suppressed the pain in my heart and played along, pretending not to know. In secret, I researched the possibilities of stomach cancer treatment and did everything I could to be good to him. I would even lose control of my emotions and cry at the thought of his illness, wanting to tell him I knew so many times, only to give up when I saw the gentle smile in his eyes. After all, he had once said, "Ophelia, I can't bear to see you sad." But now, he was leaning against the balcony railing with such a desolate expression, telling the person on the other end of the line, "I have no choice. I'm dying. I can't give her hope, or she won't be able to live on after I'm gone. So I have to pretend to be in love with someone else, to make Clara give up on me." Clara. She was Damien's childhood friend. 3 hours ago, just as Damien was celebrating my birthday with me, she had slit her wrists at home. The doctor had called Damien through the emergency contact number, only to be met with his cold reply, "Oh, then just let me know when she's actually dead." After hanging up, he had lit the candles on the cake and said to me with a gentle expression, "Ophelia, happy birthday." I had looked at him silently, and, before I could speak, his phone had rung again. It was a barrage of calls and messages from Clara. The incessant ringing and notification sounds made the living room seem exceptionally quiet, until Damien turned off his phone and looked at me apologetically, saying in a warm voice, "No one will bother us now. Make a wish." I had smiled at him and cautiously clasped my hands. "Then I'll make a wish. First, I wish for Damien's health and a long life. Second, I wish for Damien to succeed in everything and be happy and carefree. Third, Ophelia." He had suddenly cut me off, his gaze a little complicated. "Save the last wish for yourself." I had forced a smile, nodded, and this time, closed my eyes and silently wished in my heart. "Third, I wish for Ophelia to have a free and happy life from now on." The candles were blown out, and the room was plunged into darkness. As Damien got up to turn on the lights, I had reached out and grabbed his sleeve, asking calmly, "Are you really not going to see her?" In the darkness, I couldn't see his expression, but his tone was as sincere as an oath. "Ophelia, I will never be with her in this lifetime, from beginning to end. The only person I want to marry is you." Yet now, on the balcony, he was replaying the messages Clara had sent him over and over, as if he couldn't get enough of them. Her sweet, coquettish voice came through the screen. "Woo-woo, Damien. It hurts so much. Woo-woo. Damien, you big meanie. I'm never talking to you again. If you don't break up with her, the next time you see me, it will be my corpse." I mean it. I knew she wouldn't. After all, this wasn't the first time she had pulled this kind of stunt. She wanted Damien to break up with me. I had known for a long time. About half a month after Damien and I started dating, he took me to meet his friends. The moment the private room door was pushed open, the laughter died down, and everyone looked at Clara, who was sitting in the middle. I was a little confused, but I still smiled and greeted them after Damien said, "Let me introduce you. My girlfriend, Ophelia." Clara, in her high heels, walked up to me, looked me up and down, and asked Damien with extreme dissatisfaction, "She's not even that pretty. What's there to like about her?" Damien warned her coldly, "Clara, don't be ridiculous." Then he took my hand and led me to a corner to sit down. It was obvious that this girl, Clara, disliked me intensely, and so did everyone else in the room. I held my juice, a little confused. It wasn't until I overheard a conversation between two girls in the restroom that I understood. I hate it when someone new just shows up. They've been childhood sweethearts for over 20 years. Why should some nobody come and interfere? Well, I'm not going to acknowledge her as Damien's girlfriend. So, they were childhood sweethearts, a couple by default. But when Damien brought me around for the second time, everyone except Clara had changed their tune from coldness to smiles. They warmly called me Ophelia, and Leah, and even started calling me sister-in-law. I had asked Damien in surprise what was going on. He had laughed and pulled me into his arms, teasing. Of course. It's because my dear girlfriend is so wonderful that they can't help but like her. But I had done nothing. Perhaps because she saw that Damien's friends had accepted me. Clara felt betrayed. She went home, climbed onto the roof, and threatened to jump. She started a group video call and, in front of everyone, forced Damien to break up with me, or she would jump. A crowd had gathered below, and the fire department had been called with their rescue equipment. Damien's friends were all in the group video, trying to comfort and persuade her. Damien had driven like a madman. I had held my racing heart and told myself that a life was at stake. That saving her was the most important thing. But when we arrived, Clara had already been rescued. Someone had recorded a video. You could see Clara screaming at the firefighters not to come near her, then slipping and falling from the 5th-floor roof. But she had managed to grab onto the edge. Then she had started wailing. Help me. I don't want to die. Save me. Save me. The firefighters had pulled her up, and the drama was over. She had been taken for counseling, where she had cried and said that the boy she loved had been stolen by another girl. The counselor had comforted her. What can be stolen was never truly yours. You don't have to force it. She had cried even louder. What do you know? Not long after that, she had tried to overdose on sleeping pills and had sent a picture of an empty bottle to Damien, with the message, "If we can't be together in this life, then let's meet in the next." Damien. But Damien had been in a meeting and hadn't seen his phone. By the time he did, she had already been taken to the hospital by a friend she was supposed to go to the movies with and had her stomach pumped. Then came the third, fourth, fifth time. It was relentless. Except for the first time. Damien had been extremely cold and indifferent on all the other occasions. But he would say to his friends behind my back, "She's just clumsily expressing her love for me in her own way." So I was just a tool for him to make Clara give up. Fooled by his Oscar-worthy acting. I believed every "I love you," he said. Even when I suggested we take a break because of Clara's extreme behavior, he would look at me with such hurt eyes. "Ophelia, is our relationship so easily affected? Don't you trust me?" His friends would also come to persuade me. Yes, sister-in-law. Clara is still young and doesn't know any better. Don't mind her. Please don't break up with Damien. Yeah, Leah. If you and Damien get married soon, Clara will give up. At that time, I didn't know about Damien's illness. I thought everyone was just trying to help our relationship. So I was moved and accepted his proposal. Now, looking back, I realized that in this trap where only Clara and I were kept in the dark. She was the one everyone was trying to save, and I was the one being pushed into the fire as a sacrifice. When Damien returned to the living room after listening to Clara's messages, I was sitting at the dining table, admiring the engagement ring on my finger in the faint moonlight. His friends had told me that Damien had specially flown to Italy to have a renowned jewelry designer create this unique ring for me. Its meaning, my one and only in this life. They had told the story with such emotion that I was moved beyond words. Leah, why aren't you asleep yet? Damien saw me in the dining room and was a little surprised, but he quickly composed himself and walked over, asking softly, "What's wrong? Can't you sleep?" I touched the already cold water glass and shook my head. I was woken by a nightmare. I dreamed that you cheated on me after we got married, that you not only forced me to divorce you, but you also let me die in a fire to save your little lover. Damien, tell me honestly, are you hiding something from me? He was silent for a moment. His tone as gentle as ever. I won't. Leah, I will never cheat on you. I don't understand how a person's acting can be so good. He said he wouldn't cheat, because with his terminal illness, he didn't think he would have the chance. But what if he didn't have cancer? I don't know if in that moment of silence, he was thinking about hiding his illness from me, or about selfishly using me as a tool. But he didn't answer. Instead, he put his arm around my shoulders and repeated, "Leah, that was just a dream. It's not real. You can't just accuse me because of a dream. You promised to marry me. You can't go back on your word." I turned my head to avoid his approaching kiss and asked in a small, wronged voice, "Then, what if your little childhood friend still doesn't give up after we're married?" he said. And then, in a serious tone, then we'll go abroad after we're married. Anywhere is fine. As long as she can't find me. Let her see us get married and give up. Then die in a place she doesn't know, leaving me alone, unable to move on. What a sincere sentiment. I finally gave him a smile. Okay, but there's no such good thing in this world. You want her to live a carefree life. I won't let you have your way. Damien, let's make a bet. Let's see if, when she finds out about your illness, she will be unable to live on, as you think, or if she will marry someone else, afraid of being entangled with you. I had been told the story of Damien and Clara many times. Childhood sweethearts who lived upstairs and downstairs from each other. They had been in the same school from elementary to university. Because Clara was from a single-parent family, Damien and his parents had taken good care of her and her mother. Clara had once asked me, "Why did you have to come and steal Damien from me? Do you know how much Damien and I have been through?" I didn't know, so I asked Damien. He had frowned and explained patiently, "There's no law that says childhood sweethearts have to be together. I've always seen her as a sister, a real sister." As he said this, Clara happened to pass by the door. Through the crack, I could clearly see her running away in tears. Actually, I could understand why she liked Damien. Looking at the people around them, Damien was the best in terms of looks, personality, and ability, and she had been taken care of by him since she was a child. When this special treatment was suddenly taken away, of course she couldn't accept it, but that had nothing to do with me, just as my being with Damien had nothing to do with her. They were childhood sweethearts, and Damien and I, our love was something he had sought out in a sea of people. Who was more noble than the other? Oh, wait. Damien's true feelings for her were, of course, more noble than his fake feelings for me. I didn't show any signs of anything unusual in front of Damien. I continued to joyfully and expectantly write invitations, choose bouquets, and take wedding photos with him. I even filmed a wedding countdown video with a camera, showing my happiness amidst everyone's blessings. Clara found out about Damien's illness a week later. At that time, it was a month before our wedding. I was working overtime at the company to free up time for the wedding, and Damien was invited to a high school reunion. He called me, his voice a little drunk. "Leah, what time are you done? I'll come pick you up." I held the phone, silent for a moment, then said in a warm voice, "No need. There's a break room in the office." After a pause, I reminded him, "Your stomach is not well. Don't drink." "Damien." Clara's voice suddenly cut in, and the call was immediately disconnected. I stood in front of the huge floor, ceiling window, the dark sky pressed down, starless and moonless, just like my future with Damien. The project I had been working on was already finished. The clock on the desk was ticking away. I suddenly remembered a conversation I had overheard from the slightly ajar study door 2 days ago, when his friend came to visit. "Damien, maybe you should just be honest with Ophelia. At worst, she can just play along. Deceiving her like this is not right. I can see she really loves you. It's fine. The more she loves me, the more realistic this act will be. Clara will completely give up on me." His tone was so calm, as if he were talking about something insignificant. Only when he mentioned Clara did his voice waver with emotion. Clara. From beginning to end, he only cared about one person. Clara. I gently wiped away a tear that had escaped and stood by the window, quietly waiting for the sunrise. The night was not as difficult as I had imagined. When I got home the next day and turned on the camera in the bedroom, which I had forgotten to turn off, it had clearly recorded Clara bringing a drunk Damien back. The two of them were staggering, their bodies intimately close, until Clara saw the diagnosis report on the table. Late stage stomach cancer. Damien was still fast asleep on the bed. I saw Clara 3 days later. She had arranged to meet with me and Damien, bringing a clean, handsome boy named Leo. I had seen him in Damien's high school graduation photo. Damien had even mentioned with a nod, so good tone, that he had written a love letter to Clara. Then he had added, it would be good if Clara could be with him. And now, looking at the two of them holding hands, I suddenly wanted to know what the silent Damien was thinking. I was being childish before. "I've bothered you for a long time." Clara held the boy's arm and continued magnanimously. "Now I finally understand my own heart. The situation from before will never happen again. Damien, I wish you a happy wedding and a long life together. From now on, we will just be brother and sister. I stirred my coffee and heard Damien ask inexplicably. So sudden. Not at all. He's liked me for many years. We met again at the reunion, and I realized I had already liked him for a long time too. Clara said this seriously, the smile on her face completely different from the expression she had in the video when she saw the diagnosis report. At that time, her face was filled with visible panic. She had covered her mouth with one hand and held the report with the other, her gaze darting between the sleeping Damien and the report. Finally, she had run out in a hurry. 3 days. I don't know what she had figured out in those 3 days, or what decision she had made, but now she was telling us that she had someone she liked, and that person was not Damien. After that, Clara started to post frantically on her social media. Every photo was a testament to her new relationship. Damien's friends, after their initial shock, also slowly accepted it, all saying it was a good thing. Only Damien. He started to stare at his phone in a daze, and would get lost in thought when talking to me. When I called his name for the 3rd time, he finally responded, his voice faint. I'm just so happy, Ophelia. We're finally getting married. I smiled at him, guessing that what he really wanted to say was, Clara was finally pushed away by his own hands, even when one of his friends tried to persuade him. Damien, now that Clara has someone she likes, you don't have to worry about her not being able to live on after you're gone. You should tell Ophelia the truth. There's no need to get married. He had shaken his head after a moment of silence, his deep voice tinged with a hint of defiance. He said, we're getting married. Why not? Since we've come this far, let's just finish the act. Besides, I don't have to worry about Clara anymore. Isn't that better? Better in what way? I don't understand. I turned and walked to the balcony, opened the camera again, and deleted the pre-wedding videos we had filmed, one by one. These were originally supposed to be played at the wedding. The memory space on the camera was gradually increasing. In the end, only one video remained. The scene of Clara's appearance that night. The precise camera angle. The full battery display. That's right. I had intentionally left the camera on. I had intentionally left the diagnosis report out. But I'm just an ordinary person. I don't have the ability to predict the future. The reason I was so sure that Clara would show up and see the report is because I was reborn. Dying in a fire was not a dream. It was my fate in my previous life. And Damien had indeed cheated on me. In my previous life, shortly after we got married, Clara had spitefully married Leo, who had always had a crush on her. The night before her wedding, she had even sent a message to Damien. If you say you're willing to get a divorce, I'll run away from my wedding tomorrow. At that time, I had just come out of the shower and saw him staring at his phone. I had leaned over to look and saw his reply. Clara, you must be happy. This should have been a form of rejection. But I still felt a little uncomfortable. I didn't know why. Until one night, 6 months after we were married, I woke up from a dream and found the space beside me cold. When I got up to get some water, I saw him standing on the balcony, on the phone. Just as I was about to go to him, I suddenly heard him say in a hoarse voice to the person on the other end, "It's all too late." I never thought it would be like this. My heart sank, followed by a bone, chilling cold. I remembered the diagnosis report I had found by accident while cleaning not long ago. I thought it was because of this, but I didn't dare to go to him and comfort him. After all, he was hiding it from me, so he probably didn't want me to know. So I could only take good care of him, silently observe his condition, and try to make him happy, not showing any negative emotions in front of him. Just then, Clara and Leo were in a cold war, a relationship where only one person is giving, with no reciprocal love, is bound to end. This applied to them, and it also applied to me and Damien. The first time I noticed something was off between him and Clara was on a very ordinary evening. He said he had to work late and I shouldn't wait for him for dinner. So I didn't cook and went to comfort a heartbroken friend. And then I ran into Damien at a loud music bar. At that time, he was viciously beating a man who had been harassing Clara. He picked up the drunken Clara and was about to leave when he looked up and met my gaze. The flashing lights almost blinded me, but my eyesight was too good. So good that I could clearly see the flicker of panic in his eyes. which then turned to composure. He walked over to me and said, "She had a fight with Leo. Her mother called me and said she couldn't find her and was very worried. So she asked me to help look for her." That was his explanation. At that time, because of his illness and his pre-wedding rejection of Clara, I chose to believe him. But he had still betrayed my trust and had slept with the married Clara. On my birthday, no gift, no blessings, just a recording and a photo from Clara. The recording was of their panting during intimacy. Damien's hoarse voice still ringing in my ears. "Clara, Clara." The photo was a selfie of Clara. She was showing her shoulders, her cheeks flushed, leaning against the chest of a sleeping Damien. Ironically, in the bottom right corner of the photo, you could vaguely see a part of our wedding photo on the nightstand. I held my phone and sat in the darkness for a long time. It wasn't until the sunlight streamed through the glass that I realized it was dawn. Clara sent another message. "Sorry, I forgot to mention. The photo is not from this time. It's from before your wedding." The night of the high school reunion, I went to find Damien. I had to ask him why. But when I finally found him in a hotel lobby, I heard him say to Clara, "I was diagnosed with late-stage stomach cancer. I thought I was going to die. I didn't want you to be sad. So I deliberately married her to make you give up on me. It wasn't until after you got married that I found out it was a misdiagnosis." Clara, I'm sorry. I finally understood what he meant that night when he said it was too late. Misdiagnosis. He said it was a misdiagnosis. Reborn. I planned to let Damien know it was a misdiagnosis earlier. In my previous life, I had tried to take him to the hospital many times when his stomach hurt, but he had always refused, probably afraid I would find out the truth. He would just hold me and say softly, "Leah, just hold me for a while. It won't hurt after a while." At that time, I had held back my worry and didn't dare to force him. This life was different. Clara was with Leo earlier, and Damien's mood had visibly changed. The stomach is an emotional organ, and since he started to indulge in smoking and drinking, it was only a matter of time before he ended up in the hospital. The trigger was when I took him to see my friend who loves spicy food. The table was full of strong liquor. Halfway through the meal, Clara and Leo suddenly appeared. They were on a date. When their eyes met, Leo gave a slight nod as a greeting. Clara pulled him to another table. Damien's fingers, holding the wine glass, tightened unconsciously. He tilted his head back and down the wine. My friend said with a grin, "Every time we get together for drinks, Leah is a lightweight. Now that you're here, we don't have to worry about her being a buzzkill." With that, he poured more wine into Damien's glass. I took a sip of warm water and didn't stop him. So by the end of the meal, Damien's face was pale. He had a stomachache and fainted before we even got home. I drove him to the hospital. After having his stomach pumped, Damien woke up. The doctor criticized him with a not so good tone. "If you have stomach problems, you should drink less and eat less spicy food. Many stomach cancer patients start out this way. It'll be too late for regrets when it develops into stomach cancer." It was at this moment that Damien knew he didn't have stomach cancer, but he still didn't say anything to me. Instead, he arranged to meet with Clara, a restaurant with wooden latticework partitions. I sat behind them. The light fragrance of tea filled the air. Clara's voice came clearly from the other side of the partition. "Damien, is there something you have to say in person? I have to go to the movies with Leo later." Her tone was as sweet as ever, but there was a hint of subtle distance. After a few seconds of silence, I heard Damien's deep voice. "Break up with him. Let's be together." "What are you talking about?" Clara's rejection was almost a reflex. "Why should I break up with him? I know you're with him despite me. I can explain." I thought. "Enough. Damien, I don't like you." "Not at all." She stood up to leave. Damien grabbed her wrist. The next second, Clara struggled violently, her emotions agitated. "Don't bother me. Damien, please. I already know. You have late-stage stomach cancer. Don't drag me down." "Okay. I'll burn more paper money for you on holidays in the future." To be honest, when I had let Clara see the diagnosis report, I wasn't sure what her choice would be. After all, in my previous life, she hadn't had a chance to know before Damien found out it was a misdiagnosis. So this time, when I saw her abandon Damien without hesitation, I was quite surprised. It turned out that the childhood friendship and mutual love she had spoken of were nothing more than that. Clara left. Damien sat there in silence. I don't know what he was thinking. Perhaps it was the interrupted explanation. Or perhaps it was the love he had once been so sure of. The preparations for my wedding with Damien were almost complete. He didn't call it off, because he was in a peak with Clara. I pretended not to know anything and waited for the wedding day. He started to post about our daily life on his social media. Grocery shopping, making dinner, and countless gifts for me. For a moment, it was like when we first got together. We had met on a cooperation project, but our personal interaction began when he had a stomachache and stayed behind in the conference room. I had kindly poured him a glass of warm water and said friendly, I look forward to working with you in the future, my future partner. Later, as the project progressed, we gradually got to know each other. We would stay up all night working on the project, and we would eat takeout on the rooftop without any regard for our image, complaining about the evil capitalists. Occasionally, at department dinners, I would discreetly push the light dishes in front of him and remind him to drink less. I remembered he had a bad stomach. I'm an orphan. I have no family, so I cherish my friends and have a habit of remembering all the details about them. But I don't know if Damien misunderstood something. Not long after that, he started to pursue me, from cautiously asking me out to dinner, to grandly sending me gifts. Finally, at the celebration banquet, after the project was completed, he asked me, can we watch the sunrise and sunset together in the future? His eyes were so gentle and sincere when he said this that I couldn't bear to refuse. But I later learned that the look of love in a person's eyes can really be faked. Damien didn't tell anyone about the misdiagnosis. He just suddenly asked me before the wedding, if I get a terminal illness in the future, will you leave me? I don't know why he asked this question, but I still stood up and answered him truthfully. In sickness and in health, never depart. That is the wedding vow. After all, I had done that in my previous life. When I learned he had late-stage stomach cancer, I didn't think of leaving him at all, only of endless heartache. At that time, my greatest wish was for the gods to answer my prayers and for my wish to come true. For Damien to live. Later, he could live, but I died in a fire. I woke up the day before my birthday. I heard that wishes that are spoken out loud will not come true. So my wishes for his health, longevity, and happiness were all fake. I wished for him to be plagued by illness and pain more than anyone else. Otherwise, how could I be worthy of the harm I had suffered? After I finished speaking, Damien looked at me with a complicated gaze. He reached out and pulled me into his arms, as if he were talking to himself, and also to me. Yes, the wedding vow. Never depart. The wedding ceremony was no different from my previous life. Even the venue and the music were the same. A poster of our wedding photo was placed at the entrance, and the guests all said we were a perfect match. Damien was as handsome as ever in his well-tailored suit. His friends also teased him in their group chat, as they had in the previous life, to die under a peony flower, to be a romantic ghost. Except for one thing. I ran away from the wedding. I logged out of my social media accounts, changed all my contact information, and boarded a pre-booked flight. I went to a mysterious ancient village, to the vast grasslands, and then soaked in a hot spring while listening to my friend recount the scene of the wedding day. Before I left, I had left a video. The big screen that was supposed to show our pre-wedding video now showed a scene of Damien and Clara, their bodies intertwined, a dim bedroom, messy clothes, and unbearable to the ear panting. The guests were in an uproar. Clara screamed for the technical crew to turn it off and threw the tableware on the table at the big screen like a madwoman. Besides the gossiping guests, everyone's face was grim, especially Clara's mother. She pointed at the screen with a trembling hand. You two. How could you? Your brother and sister. Shut up. It was Damien's father who said it, but the words, brother and sister, were enough to cause a huge stir. Upstairs and downstairs, a single mother, a similar age. People's imaginations are strong. The scene immediately descended into chaos. Only Damien stood there from beginning to end, still holding the bouquet I had carefully chosen. His silence was like he hadn't reacted, or like the calm before a storm. He just stubbornly, repeatedly, pressed his phone. I knew he was calling me. At that moment, I was sitting in the waiting room, quietly listening to the phone ring over and over, imagining that in my previous life, when I called him, he must have been like this, just throwing the phone aside and letting it ring until it died. In that moment, I think I was happy. I returned 2 months later. The project I had finished early was just enough for a 2-month vacation. Everyone in our circle, the company's colleagues, had more or less heard about what had happened between me and Damien. Someone said with exaggeration, "Oh my God, Ophelia. If it were me, I would have taken those two scumbags down with me. Incestuous siblings. What a disgusting relationship. Like father, like son. And that scumbag has the nerve to come looking for you every day." I smiled with relief. I saw Damien one evening. It was clear that he had not had a good month. He had lost a lot of weight, and his features had become sharper, but he looked very haggard. He asked me, "Since you knew all along, why didn't you just expose me? Why did you have to do it?" At the wedding, I calmly took a sip of my coffee and met his gaze. "Why, Damien, the hidden illness, the incriminating video. Isn't that enough for you to understand why? Because I hate you." In my previous life, I had gone to him. I had asked him in great pain why he had to pull me into their ridiculous love vortex. But all I got was his indifferent and frank reply. "There's no why. Since you know, let's get a divorce." I was unwilling. Why should their happiness be bought at the cost of my ruined life? Why could he be so nonchalant in the face of the pain he had caused me? So I refused to divorce him. I smiled and told him, "Damien, I will make her forever the shameful other woman, so that your supreme love will never see the light of day, will forever be despised, forever be cursed." From the initial heartbreak to the final numbness, I was exhausted from this broken marriage. Finally, when he said again, "Ophelia, you have no parents. You must be starved for love, right? So you have to cling to me and not let go." I thought, that's it. I'm tired. I called him and agreed to a divorce. But on the day of the divorce, the restaurant where we were supposed to meet suddenly exploded. The fire spread rapidly. I was hit on the head by a falling chandelier. Dizzy and weak, I instinctively called his name. I was scared, and it hurt, at least in that moment. I really hoped he would save me, but he didn't. He just gave me a deep look, then ran towards Clara, who was curled up and crying at another table, who had come with him. Before I lost consciousness, the last thing I saw was his back as he protected Clara and left. It was good. At least it wouldn't hurt to die after passing out. But I never thought that after I was reborn, this fire would become a recurring nightmare. So much so that every time I saw them, I had to use all my strength to maintain a calm facade. So Damien, if someone in this relationship has to suffer, why can't it be you? I heard that Damien's parents got a divorce, and he was fired from the company for his misconduct. Clara and her mother were forced to move because of the gossip in their neighborhood. So she came to find me. I wasn't surprised. What surprised me was that the first thing she said to me was, "Ophelia, are you satisfied now? You've ruined our reputation, forced us to hide. Are you happy to see us like this?" I had just finished work and was walking out of the company building. Hearing her words, I wanted to laugh, but I was too tired to. She said it was all my fault. To be honest, playing the video at the wedding was the strongest revenge I could think of, and could do. If any single thing had gone wrong, it wouldn't have worked. Even if that night hadn't happened, it would have failed. But it did happen. Whether it was a drunken mistake or a deliberate act, they handed me the opportunity. So now, facing her hysteria, I gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear and told her calmly, "Yes, I am very happy, Ophelia. You." She raised her hand in a rage to slap me. The next second, I caught it. I quietly admired her angry eyes and reminded her gently, "Clara, you'd better think carefully. If you slap me, it won't just be a matter of ruining your reputation and forcing you to hide." Not wanting to waste another word on her, I ignored her hateful gaze, pushed her hand aside without room for argument, and walked past her calmly in my high heels. I never saw her again after that, until I was on a team building trip with my colleagues and got stuck in a traffic jam. I found out that there had been a car accident ahead. Soon, someone took a video and uploaded it online. The two people being carried into the ambulance were Damien and Clara. I was a little surprised. Later, I learned that because Damien no longer wanted to see Clara, She had secretly climbed into his car. They had argued on the road, and the car had spun out of control and crashed into a mountain. There were no life-threatening injuries, but Clara was disfigured, and Damien had a broken leg. Once, when I went to the hospital for a check-up, I happened to run into Damien on crutches. He was wearing a loose hospital gown, his face extremely thin. He was stubbornly pushing away his mother's help, insisting on walking by himself. And then he fell heavily in front of me. I stood there, my gaze calm and unwavering. It's hard to describe the look on his face at that moment. There was embarrassment, pain, and a faint hint of surprise and anticipation. I don't understand where his surprise came from, and I don't understand what he was anticipating. So I took a small step back and walked past him. But his current situation made me marvel at the irony of fate. In my previous life, after I died, I lingered in the mortal world for a month. I learned that when he protected Clara from the fire, he had been hit by a falling billboard and had a broken leg. At first, Clara would come to the hospital every day to see him, to ease his pain and care for his condition. Later, as Damien needed constant care, she began to grow impatient. Until one day, when Damien accidentally knocked over a glass of water, he said to her, "Clara, it's too hot." Clara suddenly fell silent. She looked down at the puddle of water and told him with certainty, "Damien, if I had known you had a terminal illness, I would never have left you. But now, you're like a cripple. You'll only be a burden to me." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Leo loves me enough. I won't divorce him." With that, she quickly fled the hospital room. And Damien's reaction was surprisingly calm. So calm that all his friends who came to visit him urged him to vent his feelings. But he didn't. He calmly accepted the treatment, did his physical therapy, and stumbled around on crutches, accepting his disability. Until one day, he found a diary in the corner of his bedroom. He suddenly stumbled and fell to the ground. I was right behind him. I watched as he went from initial calmness to finally his shoulders shaking as he clutched the diary to his chest. After that, he became extremely dejected. He no longer went out, refused all communication, and just hid in his dark room every day, holding that diary. I don't know what was so interesting about that diary. It was just some of my random notes from when I first learned about his stomach cancer. What should I do? Damien seems to be dying. Can I give him half of my life? Damien was a little unhappy today. I don't know if his stomach was hurting again. I'll learn how to make stomach soothing kanji tomorrow. I sent 81 emails and finally got a reply from a German medical expert. But he just said he was sorry. On my 25th birthday, I couldn't tell him about the surprise I had prepared. The gift I received was Damien's betrayal. The stomach cancer was fake. And so was the love. Damien, you're a big liar. Ramblings. Fragmented thoughts. The last sentence was, "That's it, Damien." I leaned in and looked closely at what he was clutching. It was a consent form for an abortion. The date was 3 days after he had cheated on me. Seeing his suddenly reddened eyes, I lost interest. I had only wanted to see his pain and misery, not his disgusting tears. I don't know why I lingered here. I could only drift around aimlessly, until I saw Leo, who Clara said loved her enough, kissing another girl in front of her. In the face of her breakdown, accusations, he just smiled flippantly. "I thought when you slept with your childhood friend, we had an agreement to play our own games." Clara's mother was also there. Hearing this, her face changed dramatically. It wasn't because of her daughter's affair, but more like, before I could investigate further, I suddenly heard Damien's hoarse, trembling voice from behind. "Ophelia, Ophelia, Leah." I subconsciously turned around, only to see him stumbling through the crowd and falling in front of me. And in the moment he looked up, I disappeared. I haven't had a dream about my previous life in a long time, ever since that ridiculous wedding. This made my already adjusted mood plummet again. A colleague noticed my strange behavior and insisted on taking me out for a big dinner after work, at a restaurant on Fushan Road. It was only when I sat down at the table that I realized why it felt familiar. This was the restaurant where I had died in a fire in my previous life. Later, it was investigated and found to be a liquefied petroleum gas leak that had exploded when it came into contact with an open flame, resulting in countless deaths and injuries. The fish in my mouth suddenly tasted bland. I looked at the date on my phone. If I remembered correctly, the explosion was tomorrow afternoon. My colleague opposite me was eating with gusto. I discreetly ordered more than 10 more plates of meat. In the spirit of not wasting food, we ate until almost all the other customers had left. Then, as my colleague was clutching her stomach and lamenting how long it would take to burn off all these calories, we went to the checkout counter. And then, using the excuse of looking for the restroom, I accidentally pushed open the kitchen door, ignoring the "kitchen staff only" sign, and said directly to the chef who was walking towards me to remind me, "I think I smell gas." They were already cleaning up the kitchen. Hearing my words, although they were suspicious, they still put down what they were doing and started to check. I stood there nervously until I heard someone say, "The liquefied gas valve here is broken. It needs to be replaced." Only then did I finally let out a sigh of relief. I don't know if it was because I had prevented a disaster, but my mood, which had been low for days, suddenly improved. And with it, my luck also improved. Not only did my project go exceptionally smoothly, but I also got a promotion. My colleagues all clamored for me to treat them to a celebratory dinner. I smiled helplessly and chose a newly opened hotel. As it was the weekend the next day, everyone ate, drank, and had fun. It was 2 in the morning when we finished. After all my colleagues had left, I rested in the lobby for a while before deciding to walk home, since it wasn't far. But I had only been walking for a short while when I saw Damien standing under a streetlight. The sky was just beginning to turn a pale blue. Damien, leaning on a crutch, limped over to me. "Can we talk?" I put my hands in the pockets of my trench coat and found it a little amusing. Talk about what? The misdiagnosed stomach cancer, or the pre-wedding affair? His face instantly turned pale. He licked his lips and, as if in self-mockery, said, "After the car accident, I seem to have started remembering my previous life. In my previous life, we were married, Ophelia. We even swore at our wedding to never part." He spoke very slowly, his voice hoarse. I watched him with amusement, like a spectator, and asked him, "Really? And were we happy?" He was silent. I chuckled lightly. As I walked past him, I suddenly heard him say in a very low voice, "We were happy." I didn't stop and continued walking. Actually, I was just curious. After I had prevented the explosion that day, the memories of my previous life had begun to fade in my mind, until today, when they completely disappeared. Even the pain disappeared along with the memories. I walked on the long street in the gentle night breeze. The sky in the distance was tinged with a golden hue. Everything was beautiful and timely. Tomorrow is the weekend, and I got a promotion. I'm only 25. Sunrise and sunset, I can watch them alone.